Let us start the 24th session of Secrets of Spirituality. The waves and the ocean. The waves each come to think that they have individual existence, forgetting that their true nature is that of ocean. The self or Atman gradually comes to remember that its true nature is that of absolute reality or Brahman. This is the essence of Vedanta, or this is the essence of the teachings of the Upanishads. In fact, this itself was the essence of all other spiritual masters in their own languages, using their own wordings. Let me tell you a story which is there in the Chandogya Upanishad. There was a king called Janushruti, and this Janushruti was involved in a lot of charity work, and he was helping even his citizens in living a comfortable and peaceful life. So this Janushruti had developed some type of confidence or arrogance that he is a very good king and he is taking care of his citizens. One day he was relaxing on top of his palace on the terrace, where he heard two swans flying above, and the two swans were conversing with each other. One swan was telling to the other one that, look there, Janushruti is standing there, and he is so noble and he is so helpful, he is so able that he is taking care of his kingdom as well as the citizens. Then the other swan was telling, okay, he is noble, he is helpful, and because of which his aura or his radiance is spreading everywhere. But his radiance is nothing when compared to the radiance of Raikwa. Now Janushruti heard this dialogue. He was wondering that the swans were communicating with each other, and the one swan was appreciating my radiance, but the other swan was telling that my radiance is nothing when compared to the radiance of Raikwa. Now, as the swans had flied away, Janushruti wanted to know who this Raikwa is. So next day, he sent his people around his kingdom to find out who this particular Raikwa is, whose radiance is much more than that of Janushruti. His people went around the kingdom. They came back and told him that Raikwa is the name of a small cart puller. He was actually using a cart for his livelihood, and this Raikwa is a normal, down-to-earth man working like a laborer in the kingdom, and many times he sleeps below his cart itself, and he looks as if he is old and his body is full of some bruises. Now Janushruti was thinking, when swans were mentioning, I was thinking that this Raikwa is a highly holy person, or he is a highly noble person whose radiance is more than me. Now the swans were mentioning about a cart puller. Anyhow, Janushruti sent his people once again to bring Raikwa to the king's court. But when the people went there, Raikwa told that I am a cart puller, I have my livelihood in my own way by pulling the cart, so I don't have to come to king's court. If king wants to see me, let him come and see me. Now Janushruti understood the message. Janushruti went all the way along with fruits and some offerings, and he went to visit Raikwa. When he went to visit Raikwa, he saw that Raikwa was actually scraping his own skin on some particular bruise, and he was simply relaxing below his cart. Janushruti was really doubtful about what swans were telling. that this particular man, how can his aura or radiance be much larger than my aura or my radiance? I am a noble king, whereas this particular person is a very ordinary laborer. But still, Janashruti went all the way and he offered all his fruits and offerings to Raikwa. And he asked Raikwa that, I heard these swans talking about you. I just want to know how your radiance is much larger than my radiance. Now, Raikwa laughed at him and Raikwa asked him, what you really want to know? Now, Janashruti sat beside Raikwa and he requested him, whatever you know, please teach me. Then Raikwa said, if at all you want to learn whatever I know, and if you want me to teach you, then you should shed that clothes which you are wearing as a king, and you should sit like in whichever way I am sitting. Janashruti completely agreed and he removed all his kingly clothes and he sat in front of Raikwa as a normal aspirant. Later on, Raikwa talked only about the self, only about the Atman, as if two waves are talking only about water. One wave will be talking and the other wave will be listening. That way, Raikwa taught him the secret of the self. Later on, when Janashruti understood all the secrets of the self, later on Janashruti really admired the swans' dialogues, that swans could really see the radiance of each person. Raikwa was a self-realized person and his radiance was much larger than that of a noble king. So that way, when the self or the Atman or the consciousness, pure, still divinity, and then when it spreads its divine energy throughout the universe, and when this particular energy is utilized to produce the five elements, and by means of which, when life is produced, when life forms are produced, when living beings are produced, inside each living beings, it is the divine energy that is working. Inside each living beings, it is the self that is using these living beings as its own vehicle. So, water is outside the fish also, water is inside the fish also. Water is everywhere, water itself is creating the ripples or the waves on its surface. Now the waves cannot think that they have an individual existence. That thinking that they have an individual existence is again a myth, which Adi Shankara calls as mithya, forgetting that their true nature is that of the ocean. In the same way, inside every living being, there is this Atman which is self-effulgent. When Raikwa was in this state of self-realization, actually the self itself was emanating its radiance. For the general vision, Raikwa was seen as a cart puller, but Raikwa was doing it only for his livelihood. Otherwise, Raikwa was a self-realized person. So the story indicates that it is not necessary that somebody has to be a great monk, or somebody has to be a great saint, or somebody has to be a very famous yogi to discuss the knowledge of self-realization. This was the very clear indication of this particular story which was mentioned in the Chandogya Upanishad, that anybody or everybody on this earth, if they have the aspiration to realize the self, and if they are having the humility to understand, it is possible to educate people on the science of self. In fact, if people shed their ego, then anybody or everybody can be self-realized. But people don't want to shut their ego because of the social conditioning, because of the illusion in which they are living in. Just like the wave is thinking that it is having an individual existence. So, to continue in the same line of discussion, in the Veda, there are 4 great sentences which are selected for discussion by the Acharyas. These 4 are called Mahavakyas. One such great sentence is Aham Brahma Asmi, which simply means I am the self. This particular sentence is in present tense, means the self is timeless, so the self has no past, the self has no future. As self is timeless, self is always present. And I am the self. Aham Brahma Asmi. Whatever I call as myself, in the awakened state, the ego identifies itself with the body, with the name, with the form. But the name was given by the parents. The form was given by nature. And the body was produced inside the mother's womb by using the 7 elements of the mother's body itself. Now when the body comes out of the womb, the body starts breathing on its own. For the first few years, the child is also not aware whether who are its parents, whether whatever is its name kept. But after a few years, because of the social conditioning, the child starts identifying itself with the particular name that was kept to it by the parents. And gradually when the child grows up into an adolescent or into a youth, then it looks itself in the mirror and it appreciates its own physical form and starts identifying that the physical form itself is me. But that is only in the awakened state. And if this identification with the name and a form continues lifelong, then lifelong the particular person will keep on thinking that I am the body. But the Veda directly says, Aham Brahma Asmi. I am the self. Why? From the awakened state, when every human being is going to a dreaming state, in the dreaming state, that particular body's feeling is not there, that particular body's experience is not there. In the dreaming state, sense organs are also completely switched off. In the dreaming state, there is no awareness of the body itself. That means, in the dreaming state, who am I? In the dreaming state, let us say the mind is working along with the memory. The 4 antakaranas working in the dreaming state. Manas, Chitta, Buddhi, Ahankara are together working in the dreaming state. In the dreaming state, eyes are not working, ears are not working, smelling, tasting, touching, they are not working. The sense organs are not working. There is no awareness of the body itself. So in the dreaming state, where did that bodily identification go? That means there was a transition from the awakened state to the dreaming state. So if at all we say that in the awakened state, it was an identification with the body. In the dreaming state, it was an identification with the mind itself. Now, after the dreaming state is gradually getting into a deep sleeping state, in the deep sleeping state, there are no dreams, there are no thoughts, there is no ego. Even though memory is there intact, there is no recall of memory, there is no storage of memory, there is no activity of the memory in the deep sleeping state. So in the deep sleeping state, who am I? If in the awakened state, if I am the body, then in the dreaming state, I am not the body, because in the dreaming state, there is no bodily awareness. Let us say in the dreaming state, we come to a conclusion that I am the mind. Then in the deep sleeping state, there is no mental awareness also. There is no physical awareness also. There is no identification with the body also. There is no identification with the memory also, thoughts also. There is no decision making in the deep sleeping state. So in the deep sleeping state, who am I? Now this simply indicates that the self has a transition in these three states. Whatever is the existence in the deep sleeping state, that is actually the reality. That reality is the self that has taken over the mind and the body. The self that has produced the mind and the body. It is the self that has gradually produced the inner organs as well as the outer organs for the existence of the body, for the life of the body. Now in that case, there are these three avasthas, three states which everybody is going through: awakened state, dreaming state and sleeping state. But the problem with the people is that when they get awakened tomorrow morning, again they will start identify themselves with their own body, along with the 6 enemies, along with the 8 types of arrogances, and they forget whole day that they are actually the self. As if the wave forgets that it is actually the ocean or it is actually the water. Now, if you do not want to forget this, you will have to be educated about what your real nature is. And you will have to be educated again and again and again until you understand, until you remember that you are the self. That is the reason Adi Shankara had written so many bhashyas, so many prakarana granthas, so many stotras, because his only intention was that he has to keep on educating people about their own divine nature. That is the very purpose for which Vyasa wrote Bhagavad Gita, Vyasa wrote Brahma Sutra. Vyasa classified the Veda into exact categories for the purpose of studies. That is the very purpose for which Jesus also taught people about the secrets of spirituality. Muhammad the Paigambar also taught about the secrets of spirituality. Gautama Buddha, Mahavira Tirthankara, Guru Nanak, all those spiritual masters taught about the secrets of spirituality only, just to make people understand that their true nature is divinity. Still, people are stuck with social conditioning, people are stuck with misunderstanding, and that is when the law of karma is taking its own course. Until people realize their true nature is the self, people will never be happy. They will be searching for happiness with the wrong things, at the wrong places, in the wrong directions. The kingdom of God is within. So this is one particular sentence which is in the Upanishad. This particular sentence is in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where it directly says, Aham Brahma Asmi, I am the self. The next sentence from Chandogya Upanishad is Tat Tvam Asi. This particular sentence came out of a dialogue in between Uddalaka Aruni and his son Shvetaketu. Shvetaketu had gone to Gurukula for studying the Atma Vidya and the Brahma Vidya. Both are one and the same. And after the completion of his education at the Gurukula, Shvetaketu came back. When Shvetaketu came back, his father, Uddalaka Aruni, himself was a self-realized master. But the father did not teach this to the son because Generally, children will not learn from the parents. I had already told you the shloka. Nikatastam gariyamsam apiloko namanyate pavitramapi yanmartya na namasyanti jannami. Whatever is very near to you, even if it is very sacred, you will not care for it because it is very near to you. Same way, Uddalaka Aruni knew that his son will not learn anything from him, so he had sent his son to Gurukula to learn from some other guru. After Shwetaketu came back, Uddalaka Aruni asked him that, have you understood what is supposed to be understood? Now Shwetaketu told, I have studied the 4 branches of the Veda. Again Uddalaka Aruni asked him, have you understood whatever is supposed to be understood? Then Shwetaketu told, yes, along with the 4 branches of Veda, I have studied the 6 Shastras also. Again, Uddalaka Aruni asked him, have you understood whatever is supposed to be understood? Then Shwetaketu told, you can check me. I have studied for these many years in the Gurukula. I have understood all the scriptures. Now I have studied all those things. You are repeatedly asking me, have you understood whatever is supposed to be understood? You can check me. Now Uddalaka Aruni brought some salt from the kitchen. He dissolved that salt in a vessel of water, and then Uddalaka Aruni asked Shwetaketu, do you see salt in this water? Shwetaketu said no. Now Uddalaka Aruni told, but before salt was there, right? Now Shwetaketu told, yes, before salt was there, you only put it into water, now salt is dissolved. Now Shwetaketu was asked again by his father that, taste the upper surface of water. Shwetaketu tasted, he said it is salty. Now take some water from the middle and taste it. Shwetaketu told, obviously that is also salty. Take some water from the bottom of the vessel. Shwetaketu told, obviously that is also salty, because salt is completely dissolved in water. Now Uddalaka asked him, have you understood whatever is supposed to be understood? Again Shwetaketu said, I did not understand whatever you are intending. Then Uddalaka Aruni told, this is how the self is. The self is not perceivable by the senses, but the whole universe is immersed in the self. As if that salt is not perceivable to your senses, but you have experienced it as salt is present in the whole of water. In the same way, please come out, let us look at nature. And Uddalaka Aruni asked Shwetaketu, pick up a seed from a tree. Now, Shwetaketu picked up a seed from a tree. Uddalaka Aruni asked him, now crush that seed and find out what is there inside the seed. Shwetaketu crushed the seed and he told, inside the seed there is only some fleshy material. Now again Uddalaka Aruni told his son, crush that fleshy material and find out, is there any tree inside it. Shwetaketu told, how funny it is, how can there be a tree inside this seed? It is only a fleshy material. When I crush it, there is nothing there. There was an outer shell, and inside there is a fleshy material. Beyond that, in the seed, nothing is there. Now Uddalaka Aruni asked, if there is nothing there in that seed except that outer covering and inside it's a fleshy material, how come the same seed becomes a tree? Then Shwetaketu said, by nature. Then Uddalaka Aruni asked, what is that nature then? If a seed is becoming a tree, through which essence that it is, nature is making it a tree? What is that particular nature? Shwetaketu said, I really don't know. Now Uddalaka Aruni told him, it is the same as the example of that water. It is the self which is completely holding its universe everywhere within. It is the self that is making the seed to become a tree. Finally, Uddalaka Aruni told his son that Tat tvam asi. You are that. Please listen to the sentence again. Tat tvam asi. Tat means that. Tvam means you. Asi means you are right now that. This word asi is also in present tense. Just like aham brahmasmi is in present tense, tat tvam asi is also present tense, which means the self is timeless. Self is the one which is creating time, and the self is beyond the time. So the self has no past tense, no present tense, no past tense, no future tense. Self is always present. Tat tvam asi. You are that right now. So this was the teaching of the father to his son after the son came back from Gurukula. This story clearly indicates that even if you study the scriptures for years together, you may not understand whatever is supposed to be understood unless someone verifies you, someone checks you. So that way, Uddalakaruni verified his son. His son had not understood whatever is supposed to be understood, even though he was studying all the scriptures at the Gurukula. But that teaching which was at the Gurukula was not a waste actually, because he had to study all the scriptures, and finally his father had to really indicate the meaning of the sentences told in the scriptures so as to understand son's own real nature or everyone's own real nature. Tat tvam asi. Coming to the next sentence, Ayam Atma Brahma. This Atma is self, or this ego is self. Atma also means ego. Brahma also means self. Whatever I call as me, actually me is a transitory wording which I use in the awakened state. The same word me will also be experienced in the dreaming state also, because this feeling of me is there in the awakened state, the feeling of me is there in the dreaming state. Now in the awakened state, the feeling of me is with the sensory experiences, whereas in the dreaming state, the sense of me is with the memory and imagination, because basically dream is also a process of creativity. It's a process of imagination. It's a process of memory recall. So in the dreaming state, the feeling of me is with the mind. In the awakened state, the feeling of me is with the body. But in the deep sleeping state, the feeling of me is with the self. It is the self which gradually comes to the other two states, and the self itself manifests itself as the feeling of me. So this ego is self. Ayam Atma Brahma. Wherever the ego is being manifested, that ego is being manifested, or ego came into its own existence by the self only. Otherwise, when you get awakened from the deep sleep, who actually constructed the ego at that time? If you say it is the brain, then the question comes, brain is made up of millions of neurons. Who controls these millions of neurons? If you say it is DNA, again the question comes, DNA is nothing but adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine. It is a replication structure. It is a combination of sugars and phosphate bonds and these bases, 4 bases. Now the question comes, if brain is made up of neurons and nucleus is made up of DNA, if DNA is made up of elements, from where the consciousness is arising out, and how come the ego is constructed on a daily basis when you wake up in the morning, how the ego gets dissolved on a daily basis when you go to deep sleep. Now this itself is the magic of the self. The self itself manifests as ego in the dreaming state and in the awakened state, as if to show its own glory, as if to show its own splendor, as if to show its own miracle. Otherwise, from an egg, how come a colorful bird will come out? Otherwise, from the throat of that colorful bird, how a beautiful voice will come out? Can you simply say it is all materialistic intelligence? Or can you simply say it is just a transformation of energy from one form to another? From where this will is coming out to express itself? How come a normal looking plant will have a beautiful, complicated flower on it? Ayam Atma Brahma. This ego is self. Self itself expresses itself through ego. So, to understand the self, ego has to be nullified. That is where I again remember Patanjali as the greatest scientist on this earth. He made a systematic practice, systematic approach to realize the self. Yama, niyama is for social health. Asana, pranayama is for physical health. Pratyahara, dharana is for mental health. Dhyana, samadhi is for spiritual health or for self-realization. That way, Patanjali gave a very great contribution for the science of self-realization. It is through dhyana, through samadhi, through meditation, through self-realization. Why the ego comes into existence, that has to be understood. As long as this is not understood, human beings keep on misunderstanding themselves. Human beings keep on getting attached to their own bodies. First to their own bodies, then whatever is related to their own bodies only, lifelong. And they keep on thinking wrongly about themselves as the body itself. And whatever is getting connected to the body, they think as if all that belongs to them. That is where the law of karma is intact. As long as you don't cleanse yourself, as long as you don't empty yourself, the law of karma is definitely intact. And the law of karma was not made by God. The law of karma was made by humans only. Because it is the humans who are supposed to understand the divinity within themselves. The humans who are supposed to evolve better than apes. It is the humans who are supposed to realize that it is the divinity which has created nature and themselves. Instead of understanding all these things, humans have misunderstood everything as such, identifying themselves with the names and the forms, and they are affected by the 6 enemies, and they are having these diseases of 8 arrogances. They are sick with these 8 arrogances. So the law of karma was not made by God. The law of karma is basically the nature's way where storage and recall is happening. Whatever you store in your memory, that only you are going to recall, and you are going to live that way only. Until your memory is cleansed and the memory is again filled with the right knowledge or the right information. Until then, your memory remains corrupted. And there are enough people to keep on corrupting your memory further, keep on giving you wrong information further, without they understanding, without they making you to understand. So, as Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri used to say, Self-realization is everybody's birthright. But as they are all wrongly conditioned by the society, they are all carried away by this glamour and color, and they are all carried away by this materialistic pursuit. When will they realize, or how will they realize that this ego is self? This is the third sentence out of the four. Let me come to the last sentence, that is Prajnanam Brahma. Prajnanam Brahma. In Sanskrit language, we have something called Upasarga. This pra is one particular Upasarga out of the 22 Upasargas. Whenever a Upasarga is enjoined to a word, the meaning of the word will completely change. You can see here, Prajnanam Brahma. Jnana means what? Knowledge. Now, knowledge of what type? Many times people think that collection of information itself is knowledge. No, the collection of information is going to be a data bank. That's all. Just remember the story of Raikwa and Janashruti. Raikwa was having knowledge of the self, but Raikwa was basically a cart puller. So, people need not think that lot of information, when it is there, you will have a self-realization. It may not be so. We have been seeing so many authors, scholars, scientists, poets, philosophers. We have been seeing many of them, but hardly any of them are self-realized. There are people who have written hundreds of books, who have read thousands of books. There are people, their houses are full of all types of books. There are people who have multiple degrees. There are people who are having a high-level education of the normal mainstream universities. Actually, the meaning of university is the study of the universe. I don't know whether there is any real university as such which is teaching about the secrets of the universe or secrets of God. Instead, all the universities on this earth are teaching what? Teaching multiple graduation degrees, multiple post-graduation degrees, multiple research programs, funding for the programs, developing products, offering solutions to existing problems. But the basic problem is what? The basic problem is every individual is identifying himself or herself with the body itself. Now, until that education is made correctly, what is the use of all other technical or technological or material or financial achievements or political achievements? So, generally, people think that a lot of information collection itself is knowledge. Now, a lot of information collection means you are like a library. In the library also thousands of books will be there. It does not mean that out of all those thousands of books, even if you read all those thousands of books, whether you will become self-realized or not is questioned. As I told you, there are so many well-educated people on the surface of this earth in every country. But what are they doing with all that education and the degrees? They are neither self-realized, nor are they knowing that there's a science of self-realization, and nor are they worried about understanding their own true divine nature. That is how the law of karma is intact. Now, jnana means what? Jnana means knowing whatever you did not know. Let us say you have not tasted a dragon fruit. Imagine that way. Let us say you have not tasted a dragon fruit. Now somebody told you there is a fruit called dragon fruit. Now you will go to a store and you will bring a dragon fruit. You will cut it into pieces and then you will taste it. Now you may say that now I know how the taste of dragon fruit is. Until then you would say, I never knew that there is a fruit called dragon fruit. Now I brought one dragon fruit today. I have tasted it. Now I know dragon fruit. That is jnana. But that is not prajnana. Now what is the difference? You tasted a dragon fruit, that was a sensory experience. Similarly, let us say you have not seen Hampi Virupaksha temple. Let us say you have not seen Golconda fort. Let us say you have not seen Ganesh Puri. Imagine that way. I am telling you these some places. Let us say you have not seen any of these three places. Now you will say that you don't know where Golconda fort is, or you don't know where Hampi Virupaksha temple is, or you don't know where Ganesh Puri is. Let us say you will go to Ganesh Puri, you will know that Avadhuta Nityananda had a Mahasamadhi there at Ganesh Puri. Let us say you go to Golconda fort, then you will say that now I know how Golconda fort was constructed by the previous kings or emperors. Now if you go to Hampi Virupaksha temple, then you will say that now I know in which place Krishnadevaraya ruled, taking that Hampi as his capital city, and he constructed a Virupaksha temple there. Now as long as you did not go there, you would not be knowing it. You went there, now you know it. Now can you call it as prajnana? No, it is again a jnana. Jnana means through your own sensory experiences, you saw something, you tasted something, you listened to something, you touched something, you smelled something. So then you say, I did not know till now about this. Now I know this. So that jnana is something which you are not knowing earlier. Now you are knowing by means of the five sensory perceptions. What is prajnana? Prajnana means you are already that, but that you don't know, and this is not available to your sensory experiences. Prajnanam Brahma means self is the real knowledge. Brahma means self. Self is the real knowledge. It is the self which is having the ability to taste, ability to smell, ability to hear, ability to see, ability to touch. When the self leaves the body, that body will again have eyes, again will have ears, again will have nose, again will have tongue, again will have skin. But the dead body will not be able to perceive anything through the sensory experiences. When the body is alive, it is able to have all these experiences. That means, as long as the breathing is happening, the sense organs are working. When the breathing stops, sense organs stop working. But the eyes are very much there. Ears are very much there. All other things are very much there. Even the brain is also very much there. Right? But how brain stopped working? Now you may say, brain stopped working because neurons stopped working. Again the question will be, who made the neurons to stop working? Because neurons are what ultimately? Neurons are again a myelin sheath and protein. Now how brain stopped working? Which means something else made the brain to stop working. Something else made the heart to stop beating. Something else made the lungs to stop breathing. That something else which was earlier using the body for its purpose, because of the presence of the self itself, body was working. When the self decided not to be with the body, then the body is declared as dead by the other living people. Now what is this jnana? It is not jnana, it is prajnana. Because the knowledge is already there within. But people did not find time at all to understand this. In the Mahabharata, Yaksha asks a question to Yudhishthira, saying, what do you think is the most amazing thing on this earth? Most amazing, astonishing thing on this earth? Then Yudhishthira says the answer, ahanyahani bhutani gachanti yamamandiram sheshaah sthirastvam kimaschyaryam atapparam. Yudhishthira says, ahani bhutani gachanti yamamandiram. On a daily basis, everyone is seeing that creatures are dying, people are dying, animals are dying, birds are dying. Daily basis, people are seeing death. In spite of that, sheshaah sthirastvam kim aschyaryam atapparam. Sheshaah sthirastvam. In spite of all that, the remaining ones, they want to remain permanent over here. Whenever someone is dead, only for a day or two, only till the day 14th day, they may keep crying or they may keep mourning. But after a few days, they also want to remain eternal, permanent. That is what is their presumption or assumption or ignorance or whatever. So, even when they see death on a daily basis, what do they understand when they see the dead body? That how the body became dead, through what basis, what stopped the functionality of the body. Right now when you are living, why don't you understand? Right now when you are living, why don't you appreciate? Right now when you are living, why don't you show gratitude? Because the very life is because of the self that is within. When the self decides to stop, that is when all the body's functionalities will stop. In the case of Sadashiva Brahmendra, as he went into Nirvikalpa Samadhi, the self did not decide to stop. That is when he was inside the mud also, the body did not die. Even the breathing stopped, even the heart stopped, even the brain stopped. Body did not die. Why? Because the self did not decide to leave the body. Why? Because the body was still very much healthy. That was the science of Samadhi, which was exhibited by Sadashiva Brahmendra. Now, what is this knowledge? This knowledge that is already within. This knowledge need not be obtained by means of sensory organs as such. And as such, this knowledge is not available to the sensory organs. This is the science of yoga. So, prajnanam brahma means self is the real knowledge. Self is the ultimate knowledge. So, these are the 4 sentences, 4 great sentences that were picked up by the acharyas. And for these 4 sentences only, the acharyas have written the commentaries. Now, till now we discussed the 4 sentences from the Veda. Let us discuss the sentences from the Bible again. My presence will go with you. I will see the journey to the end, is told in the chapter Exodus. What does this sentence mean? My presence will go with you. I will see the journey to the end. Whatever Arvinda told till now is again meant in the same sentence. Water's presence will go with the fish. Water will see the journey to the end. It is the self which decides to use the body, and that is when the body comes out of the womb, it is the self which is going to cause or initiate the functioning of the body. That way, my presence will go with you. And it is the self which decides when the body gets aged or when the body meets a fatality through some other way. Maybe it is a murder, maybe it is a suicide, maybe it is a highway accident, in whichever way, or maybe it is due to old age itself. In that case, when the body is unable to sustain further, when the body does not have the ability to nourish itself by means of food and breathing, that is when the self decides that let the journey be ended. So I will see the journey to the end. My dear listeners, please understand what great sentences are there. Even in the Bible, even in the Holy Quran, even in the Granth Sahib, even in the Vedas, even in the Upanishads. Now, what to read, what not to read, what to study, what not to study, you people should decide. If you want to read about the self, there is enormous literature. If you want to study about the self, there is enormous knowledge that is already there in the holy spiritual lineages. It is up to each of us to use the time in whichever way we want to use the time. I use my personal time in this way only. Daytime, I work for my livelihood. Evenings and other holidays, I work in this way only. I study in this way only. I teach in order to learn for myself only. I don't know whether my students or my listeners will learn this or not. I don't know. But the greatest benefit is that by teaching, I am learning. By speaking about self, I am learning more about self. By speaking about God again and again, I am remembering God again and again. So, my dear listeners, please remember this sentence which is in the Holy Bible. My presence will go with you. I will see the journey to the end. I should tell you one small example. One of my maternal grandparents was sick. And when I went to my native place, his house was about half a kilometer away from my grandparents' house. So I went there. Actually, my grandmother told me that that particular grandfather, he is a distant grandfather. He was a distant grandfather. So my maternal grandmother told me he is very sick and he is paralyzed. So I decided I should at least go there and I should see him, at least for the sake of my consolation. So when I went there, in the middle of the living room, his body was lying, body was completely paralyzed. And legs were not moving, hands were not moving, but he was awake. When I went there, the body was surrounded by foul smell because he was urinating there only, he was excreting there only. But his eyes were open, he was watching me. He was unable to talk. In fact, when he was moving all right, earlier, many times, he used to call me very fondly, and whenever there used to be a function at their home, I used to go there and he used to give me many eatable things. He was actually so fond of me, and I was also highly respecting him as one of my grandfathers. But when I saw the situation there, where his body was lying in the middle of the living room on a particular mat, and in that house, there was his sister who was taking care of him, and the sister was telling that I don't know when this is going to end because this is a daily pain for all of us. His life is not going. He is having a wretched condition there. Daily I'll have to clean, and he's also crying whole day. He is awake. He is listening to whatever we are speaking, but he is unable to communicate back with us. And she was telling, when she was telling that, I was not able to speak anything there in front of him, but he was listening to whatever she was telling, and tears started rolling down from his eyeballs. When I saw that scene, even now when I remember, I feel pity for him. He was a noble man. He was a good man. But during his death, he did not have a peaceful death. He did not have any disease as such, but it was an old age. Because of the old age, there was a stroke. His eyes were working, his ears were working, his brain was working, but his physical body was not working. And when he listened to whatever his sister told, again he was crying, tears were rolling down. I was watching him. I thought I should not speak anything now, because I don't know, in whatever way I speak, in whatever way he may feel it. I thought, let me not increase his pain further. It was a physical pain as well as a mental pain. So I simply came back. After a few days, he left his body. Later on, I started thinking, why was that particular death that way? Then I remembered a great sentence in Kannada. Sharanara gunavanna maranadalli kaanu means, look at the dead body of a great person to understand that he was a great person. I had already told you about the death of Paramahamsa Yogananda, right? When Paramahamsa Yogananda left his body, his face was still having that radiance and the body did not decay even after next 2 weeks. So that much of prana was already present in Paramahamsa Yogananda's body, even though the self had decided to end the show. Now, in case of my distant grandfather, why this happened? Because he was not a self-realized man. He was a normal farmer working in the fields. And he was normally having a general lifestyle. He never thought about death until he had such condition. For that matter, nobody thinks about death until they are resting on that mat, right? Whether in the hospital or whether at home, until they get into such calamity conditions, until then people are really very busy thinking about life only. That is what is the law of karma, right? So as my distant grandfather or my other grandfather also, no one is an exception. Please don't think that I am giving an example of only that particular grandfather. I have seen many physical deaths till now, and all the deaths are, at the end, it is painful only for them because they don't want to die. Why they don't want to die? Because they think that death is something different than life. They want to cling to a painful life only. They don't want to have a painless death that way. Because of ignorance, because of illusion, because of the wrong identification with the body. Now, in this particular example, whatever I told, he did not want to die and his ego was still intact. When his ego was still intact, he could never sleep also properly. In spite of the physical conditions, inabilities, he could not sleep properly. You will be able to sleep properly only when you reduce your ego. As long as you have a larger amount of ego, whenever you have a larger amount of pain, whenever you have a larger amount of mental hurt, whatever you call it, then you will have to take sleeping pills for taking a good sleep. That way, sleep, even though it is so natural to so many other animals and birds and other creatures, sleep is a distant thing for the so-called civilized and educated human beings. A very poor person will sleep very happily, but a very rich person may not sleep so happily because of the contamination of the mind, because of the excessive ego. So in this particular example, the ego was becoming a hindrance for the normal journey. If he had submitted himself to the will of God, then automatically the sentence, my presence will go with you, I will see the journey to the end, would have happened that way. But the problem here is, because of the ignorance of the self, we think life is ours. We think everything is ours. We cling to whatever is temporary here. We forget our eternal divine pure nature. So, my dear friends, now you may think again, sir, what type of death are you going to think about? Again, you can challenge me also, right? Just because I am talking all these things, you may think that, oh, you're all telling very big things now in this presentation. What about you, sir? I'll honestly tell you, my dear listeners, I keep telling to the self, halaladru haku, neeraladru haku, benkiladru haku. Oh God, put me in the milk, or put me in water, or put me in fire. It is your will, it is your wish. Whatever I call as my ego is only a transitory, temporary existence. If you take me into your hands, my Lord, then that is my liberation, right? That is my salvation, right? Bondage is cleared there, right? So that way, my dear listeners, if you want to check me, please check me. Later on also, if you want to test me, you can test me. Someday, if I have a physical death, according to that particular sentence, Sharanara Gunavanna Maranadalli Kanu, if at all I have such peaceful physical death, I'll be thanking the self only for imparting me a liberation, for imparting me a freedom. That way, I hope your doubts are cleared or your suspicion on me is also cleared. You don't have to doubt me. You don't have to worry much about me. My dear listeners, you try to understand your own pure divine nature. The problem with the modern generation is that students keep on questioning the teacher only. Students have to first listen to the teacher, understand the sentences told by the teacher, and students should respect the intention of the teacher. Actually, that was the system of Gurukula. But in the modern system of education, students can also question the teacher. And students can also say, we know more than you. But that we know more than you is applicable only to Googleshwar. It is not applicable to self-realization. In the case of self-realization, there is nothing called more knowledge of the self or less knowledge of the self. As I told you already, it is not jnana, it is prajnana, and that knowledge is already within. In the case of self-realization, there is nothing like that particular person is more realized, this particular person is less realized. It is nothing like that. That particular monk or sage or yogi is more knowledgeable. This particular sage or saint or rishi is less knowledgeable. Such questions do not arise at all. Because the science of self-realization is same for every individual. There is no bigger guru, there is no smaller shishya there anywhere. In the science of self-realization, there is nothing called guru and shishya also. That guru and shishya or teacher and student is required only for the purpose of self-education, not for self-realization. Because self-realization is always individual. Uddalakarni, even though he was a father, he took the role of a teacher for his own son when the son came back from Gurukula also. But it was Shvetakesu's responsibility to understand the secret of the self. That way, please understand this sentence once again. My presence will go with you. I will see the journey to the end. The sentence is written or spoken as if God is telling. It is actually God only is telling and human being is expressing. Whether it is Moses or Jesus or Muhammad or whoever else. They are only expressing. It is the God himself from within producing such thoughts. Blessed are the pure in the heart, for they shall see God. Told in the New Testament of the Bible, Matthew's chapter. Blessed are the pure in the heart, for they shall see God. What is this heart? This heart does not mean the physical heart. In Sanskrita, heart has one word called Hrudaya. Hrut-aya. Hrut means center or the core. It does not mean the fleshy muscle that is beating. The inner core of an individual or the inner core of a personality, that is mentioned as heart in the Bible. Now, if at all you purify your inner core, if at all you purify your culture, or by means of culture, you purify your memory, your mind, your intellect, you shall see God. For seeing God, no eyes are required. You can see God even without the eyes. In Karnataka, there is a place called Gadag. In the Gadag, there is one particular ashrama where there was a great saint come singer called Ganayogi Panchakshari Gawai. Even though he was blind, he used to play so many musical instruments and he used to sing. Even now, that particular institution is teaching music to the blind people. Even today, that ashram is functioning. So, even though he was blind, he had seen God. His life was a service to God. Whole of his life, he used to sing of God only. He used to sing so many great poems. Someday, if you are in Karnataka, if you are in Bengaluru, visit that ashrama at Gadag. Even I have not visited. I have an ambition to visit in future. I have made a list of places, out of which some places I have visited, some places I am yet to visit. There are so many such holy places around us only in the Karnataka state, in Tamil Nadu, in Kerala, in Maharashtra, in Andhra Pradesh. In South India itself, we have so many such holy places where so many holy spiritual people have lived. Now their lifestyle is a role model for all of us. I have been telling you that this particular country called Bharata is a blessed land. The number of holy people who have been born in this land, such number is not there in any other country on this earth. That way, we are also blessed, we are also fortunate. So I mentioned this example of ashrama at Gadag, where Ganayogi Panchakshari Gawai and his lineage of other disciples, many of them are blind and they can play so many musical instruments, stringed instruments, percussion instruments, and vocal singing. They are all pure in the heart. They shall see God. For seeing God, eyes are not necessary as such. Those who are having eyes, what are they seeing is a big question. It is not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts, told in the Holy Quran itself. In the Holy Quran, you can find so many great statements. But unfortunately, Bible has become very famous because of its free circulation. Even though the intention was wrong when they circulated the book, at least it has reached the masses where people like me also have read the Bible to understand the truth that is present in it. In fact, when I was studying in high school, one set of people came to the high school, they give free copies of Bible to all of us. Their intention in circulating those particular copies was something different. Even I did not know at that time about their intention. But even today, I have that copy of the Bible. And I have read the book so many times. Whenever I read the book so many times, when I similarly read the other Indian philosophical books or Indian spiritual books, the Vedic books, then I have a parallel to both of them, which means whatever is told in the Bible, whatever is told in the Bhagavad Gita, how essentially they are one and the same. So, Bible has become famous all over the world. At least Bhagavad Gita has become famous in India and in other parts of the world due to the work of so many great Swamis of this particular land. Right from Swami Vivekananda, before him also, after him also, so many people have put a lot of efforts at least to print the Bhagavad Gita, translate it into different languages and to circulate. Of course, here the intention is not something different. Here the intention is clear that let the holy teachings of the Bhagavad Gita be accessible to people. But in the same way, even the Holy Quran has to be read by people. Just like all other books, even the Holy Quran has to be translated to many languages. Of course, it is being done now anyhow. But not with the wrong intention, but with the right intention. That let all these books be read by everybody. Then only they will not get accustomed to their own religions or their own faith systems. They will not say that my religion is great, your religion is worst. Still, if all these holy books are taught right from primary school, irrespective of religion, gender, caste, creed, or whatever, let the essential teachings of all the holy books, of all the religious books, let it be taught in the primary schools and high schools for all students equally. Then they will know that holiness is not somebody's property. Holiness or divinity is there within everybody. So that way, even in the Holy Quran, you will find so many such great sentences. It is not the eyes that are blind, but the hearts. Why? Because the hearts are impure. When the hearts are impure, even though eyes are open, they do not see God. As if water is around the fish only, fish will not see water. Fish will only keep watching other creatures in the water. And it will keep on thinking, you are different, I am different, let us fight. And that will go on as the law of karma. I am Yehovah, that is my name, is again told in the Bible. Isaiah chapter. I am Yehovah, that is my name. Now, whenever this sacred knowledge or holy knowledge or spiritual knowledge has to be expressed, it has to be expressed through speech. When it has to be expressed through speech, a language needs to be utilized. Now, how do we express this one which has no name? It has no name, it has no form, it has no shape, it has no time, it has no space. It is omniscient, omnipresent, omnipotent, divine consciousness. Now, these terminologies may not be understood by the common people. That is why in every religious system, each holy master, they had some name which was referring to God. Just like in the Indian system, Shiva, Vishnu, they were all coming into existence as particular names and forms. In the same way, in all other faith systems also, somehow they indicated the Lord's presence by means of a name. Otherwise, again, what would have happened was, if anybody really says that the divine consciousness is nameless, timeless, spaceless, then people will say it is everything less only. People may completely misunderstand, misinterpret the holy sentences saying, so God is everything less only, then God is nothing only. Now that is the problem here. Teaching the spiritual secret is a bigger challenge here. Because for teaching the spiritual secret, we have to use metaphors, we have to use allegories, we have to use words. Now the problem there is, even the same words can be misunderstood by the other people only. Because people think, when they go to a Shiva temple, people think inside the sanctum sanctorum there is a statue. They think only that is Shiva. And they go around the sanctum sanctorum, they offer something to the Shiva statue, and they have prostrations in front of the Shiva, and then they come back. Now they think that Shiva is only there inside the temple. After I go home, I can do whatever because Shiva is not watching me. After I go to office, I can do whatever because Shiva is not watching me. Next day morning when I go back to temple, I can go around sanctum sanctorum again, and I can worship Shiva there. I can pray, I can offer some flowers, I can take prasada. Then when I come back, I will think that Shiva is only in the temple, only there as a statue. Now that is the problem there. That is the problem where if people keep on worshipping images, statues, pictures, then they think God is there only in those pictures or images or statues. And people live a hypocritical life that way. Only inside the temple they are very decent. Once they come outside the temple, their nature is something different. That is the challenge of spiritual teaching. Now, in case of spiritual teaching, how to teach essentially whatever is supposed to be taught is itself a big challenge. So, should we have a name to God or should we indicate a name to God? If you don't indicate a name, then people will think in a different way. That is when in the Bible it is told, I am Jehovah, that is my name. Just like in the Islam, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah. Whenever the azan is heard, the word Allah should produce goosebumps in you. Whenever you think of a Vedic sentence, Aham Brahma Asmi, that also should you produce goosebumps in you. Now I am Jehovah, that is my name. Whenever you hear this name also, this also should produce goosebumps in you. Why? Because these are the names that are utilized by the spiritual masters to indicate the one that is nameless, timeless, spaceless. As I have been telling you, that the challenge of spiritual teaching, without using words, without using speech, how do we educate? Now, if we do not educate, then also we know what is going to happen. For example, if Adi Shankara did not write those books, if Adi Shankara did not educate people, if Adi Shankara did not establish the 4 hermitages in the 4 corners of this great land called India, we know what else would have happened. The whole complete Vedic spiritual teachings would have been lost when this King Ashoka was transforming the whole land of India into Buddhism, where they did not practice whatever Buddha taught. Instead, they kept on practicing all other things. And that is how, even in India now, where is this Buddhism? Where is the real teaching of the Buddha being practiced? Is a big question mark. Now, when Ashoka, he himself was a king earlier, he himself was involved in killings and murders. Later on, he completely transformed himself into a monk, and he wanted to completely transform the whole land into the faith system which he believed, and because of which what happened? In Buddhism and in Jainism, even in Tibet, they did not have their own army, they did not have their own weapons, they did not have their own measures to protect themselves. So ultimately what happened? Ultimately there was an invasion of the Mughals, and because of the invasion of the Mughals, what happened in India is already known to you. You all have studied history. All that happened because of what? Because of this King Ashoka trying to convert the whole of the Indian continent into Buddhism, where it is a path of renunciation for everybody. Of course, this path of renunciation has to be followed by everybody, but not by leaving the normal lifestyle. Just because Siddhartha left his palace, it is not necessary that everyone has to leave their house. Siddhartha left his palace, he became Buddha. That is fine. When he went for alms, when he went begging from home to home for food, there were other people who used to grow that food and they used to supply food to Siddhartha Gautama Buddha. Now, if everyone leaves house, if everyone becomes a monk, who will have agriculture, who will produce food? And everyone is stopping producing food, even for the monks, where there will be food. So, is there any point in converting the whole of the Indian continent into Buddhism? That was what the Emperor Ashoka did. And ultimately, what happened? Mughal invasion happened, and these people were having this ahimsa paramo dharmaha, and these Buddhists did not want to hurt anybody else. In turn, what happened was they were hurt. As these people did not have the weapons, people who had weapons, they killed them. And gradually Buddhists went north side, Jains went down side, right? In fact, Jains and Buddhists were together, not having any weapons as such, right? So gradually what happened? Jains had to come down. They came all the way till Karnataka. They came all the way till Mudabidre, Karkala, Dharmasthala. And Buddhists went all the way till Tibet. If Adi Shankara would not have come at that time, and if he did not try to educate people, now think about me and you, this class would not have happened at all. If Adi Shankara did not try to rejuvenate the Vedic wisdom, and if he did not try to educate people about the secrets of spirituality, I would not be taking this session also right now with you. Because we don't know what else would have happened in the history of time. So, that is the challenge of spiritual education, where if people stop educating others in the domain of spirituality, we know that in the next future what is going to happen. People will remain ignorant only, people will multiply ignorance only. That also we know. And at the same time, we know that it is not so easy to format your memory and put something good into your memory afresh, or completely cleanse your memory and again fill your memory with the right knowledge. That is also a challenge. Now, all the people who are involved in the spiritual education, they have to accept this challenge and they have to keep on doing this activity only. This itself is a great example of Karma Yoga. I always mention Adi Shankara as an embodiment of all the three yoga. Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. All the three are practiced by one single person. He is one of my greatest role models for this lifetime. Now coming back to this sentence which is mentioned in the Bible. Just like in many faith systems, they used many names. Except in Buddhism or maybe in Jainism, they don't have such specific names for God. Because, especially in Buddhism, they don't discuss much about God. At least in Jainism, they talk about soul a lot. But in Buddhism, they don't talk much about soul. They only talk about mind. And I have already told you the reason. Now, because of which, in Buddhism, there is no name for God, and that is how only Buddha is being worshipped everywhere. But the spiritual masters who were teaching this particular science right from the prehistoric ages. They had also understood this particular complication, and they also had thought that one divine name should be utilized for expressing the secret of the self. That is when in the Bible the holy name is told as I am Jehovah, that is my name. Later on I am going to show you the 10 commandments. There one particular commandment is there told by the Moses that thou shalt not take God's name in vain. Let me explain that when I come to that particular slide. Not now, because I'll be digressing from the main discussion. So if there is a name for God in any other language, in any other faith system, please respect that. Don't ridicule that. Because whichever holy master has given a name to God with a deeper intention, with a greater intention, they have formed that name, or that name might have come out of themselves through a divine will itself. Who knows? Just like in Sanskrita it comes as Shete iti Shivaha, Vishati Ashnati iti Vishnuhu, Brahmati iti Brahma, Lakshanat Lakshmi. How come all these sentences come? Ramate iti Ramaha. How come these sentences come? They all have etymological meaning, right? In the same way, in all other languages, if a great name is utilized for expressing the divine secrets, please respect all those names in whichever language it may be. But at the same time, one word of caution, don't respect names like Koronamma and Plagamma also. Because such names are not coined by the realized masters. Such names are coined by the people who are foolish and ignorant and afraid. And they think that anything, everything can be coined with such a name, and if they worship with that, gradually Corona also will go away. That is a highly unscientific, idiotic practice. So that is why you should be careful here. Upanishad says, Kshurasya dhara nishita duratyaya durgham patastat kavayo vadanti. Uttisthata jagrata prapyavaran nibodhata. This is what Upanishad says. Learning about spirituality is like walking on the edge of this sword. So, arise, awake, find a competent teacher and learn this knowledge from a competent teacher. Whereas the people who have coined these words like Plagamma and Koronamma, they have coined out of their own selfishness only. It is not out of any realization coming out. It is out of fear it is coming out. So that is the word of caution. You should be careful about what to accept, what not to accept. We call it as Hamsa Kshira Nyaya. You should have enough logic, enough intellectual ability to accept what as a fact and what as a myth. Only then you will have a progress in gaining spiritual knowledge. It's already 9:05 now. For today, I am going to end this session. This is my last slide for today. Tomorrow is Thursday. See you again on Friday. Until then, take care and bye-bye.